I finally blew up my family's facade at my own damn book launch, and now I don't know who I am anymore. It happened under the fairy lights, surrounded by the smell of old paperbacks and cheap sparkling wine. My moment. The one I'd worked towards for, like, literal decades if you count the terrible poetry phase in middle school. My first novel, actual publication, sitting on a table with my face beaming awkwardly from the back cover. Friends were there, colleagues, even a few lovely strangers who'd somehow heard about it. And then, there was them. My family. Positioned like tactical units near the cheese platter. My sister, Chloe, was holding court, naturally. Dressed in something ridiculously expensive that probably cost more than my entire print run advance, gesturing wildly as she talked to one of the bookstore owners. My mom hovered nearby, eyes darting nervously between Chloe and me, her smile plastered on so tightly I worried her face might crack. My dad stood slightly apart, arms crossed, looking vaguely uncomfortable but dutiful, the way he always did at any event that wasn't centered around golf or his boat. My stepdad, Kevin, Mom's second husband, was probably glued to his phone, checking stock prices or something equally thrilling. He usually treated family events like inconvenient layovers. I was trying to focus, really I was. Signing a book for an old professor, talking to a genuinely enthusiastic reader about a minor character I loved. But I could feel the Chloe vortex sucking the oxygen out of the room. It always happened. No matter the occasion, my graduation, my engagement party, the one that didn't last, maybe thanks in part to the vortex, even freaking Thanksgiving dinner, Chloe became the center of gravity. And tonight, despite it being my night, was no different. Then I saw her gesture towards the table with my books. She picked one up, flipped it over, and said something to the bookstore owner that made him chuckle uncertainly. My stomach plummeted. I knew that look on her face. It was the same one she wore right before she'd accidentally reveal my most embarrassing childhood story, or jokingly point out a flaw I was desperately trying to hide. I excused myself mid-sentence from the lovely reader, "Sorry, Brenda," and started weaving through the small crowd. As I got closer, I heard it. Clear as a bell over the low hum of conversation. "Honestly, it's sweet she finally finished it," Chloe was saying, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. She tapped my author photo with a perfectly manicured nail. Bless her heart, she's always had such an imagination. Lots of little stories, mostly just for herself, you know? I mean, obviously, I went the practical route, business school and all that, but someone had to be the dreamer in the family. It's just, well, let's just say it's a very specific niche. Very. Her. She gave a little tinkling laugh, the kind that sounded like breaking glass if you listened closely enough. The bookstore owner looked deeply uncomfortable. My mom had materialized beside Chloe, placing a placating hand on her arm. "Chloe, dear," she began, her voice trembling slightly. But I'd heard enough. Years of this shit. Decades. Little digs disguised as compliments, passive-aggressive barbs wrapped in faux concern, constant undermining masked as sisterly teasing. All of it tolerated, excused, smoothed over by my parents who were terrified of Chloe's moods, terrified of conflict, terrified of anything that might disrupt the perfect family picture they tried so desperately to paint. Something inside me didn't just snap, it fucking detonated. The years of swallowing my anger, of forcing smiles, of letting her diminish me piece by tiny piece, it all erupted. "Actually, Chloe," I said, my voice much louder and colder than I intended, cutting through the chatter. Heads turned. Oh God, everyone was looking. It's not just sweet that I finished it. It's the result of 5 years of hard fucking work, revisions, rejections, and pouring my soul onto the page while you were busy critiquing my life choices from the sidelines. Chloe's eyes widened, shocked that the background character had suddenly grabbed the mic. "Liv, honestly, I was just saying." "No," I cut her off. The word felt powerful, unfamiliar. "I know exactly what you were saying. You were doing what you always do. Minimizing me. Making sure everyone knows that even on my night, you're still the successful one, the practical one, and I'm just the dreamer playing pretend." My mom grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Olivia, please," she hissed, her face pale. "Not here. Don't make a scene." I shook her off. "Why not here, Mom? Is the truth inconvenient for the family narrative? Should I have waited until we got home so you could tell me I misunderstood, that Chloe didn't mean it, that I'm being too sensitive? Like always?" My dad finally stirred, stepping forward. "Livy, calm down. Your sister was just..." "Just what, Dad?" I rounded on him. "Just being Chloe? Is that the excuse we're still using? After all these years? After she borrowed my college fund deposit and forgot to pay it back? After she told my ex-fiancé that I was probably settling because I was scared of being alone? After she conveniently lost the recommendation letter I needed for that grad program? When do we stop excusing just being Chloe? The air crackled. You could hear people pretending not to listen, shuffling their feet, suddenly fascinated by the wine labels. Chloe looked like she'd been slapped. Good. How dare you? She finally sputtered, her face flushing crimson under her expensive foundation. Bringing up old things. Twisting things. Am I twisting them, Chloe? I asked, stepping closer. Or am I just finally saying them out loud, in front of people who aren't obligated to pretend they don't see it? I gestured around the room. This is my accomplishment. Mine. Not yours to diminish or use as a backdrop for your usual performance. Kevin, my stepdad, who'd apparently detached from his phone, mumbled something about needing some air and practically sprinted towards the exit. Good riddance. My mom looked like she was about to cry. Olivia, think about what you're doing. I am thinking, Mom, I said, my voice shaking now, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of raw, painful clarity. I'm thinking about every time I downplayed my own successes so Chloe wouldn't feel bad. Every time I changed the subject when she started tearing someone else down. Every time I swallowed my hurt because keeping the peace was more important than my feelings. Every time you told me to be the bigger person, which really just meant letting Chloe win. I looked directly at Chloe. Her shocked expression had morphed into that familiar, glacial fury. I'm done, I said, softly but firmly. I'm done playing this game. You don't get to sabotage this for me. Not tonight. Chloe scoffed, regaining some of her bravado. Sabotage? You're being paranoid, Liv. God, you always were dramatic. Was I being dramatic when you called my editor pretending to be my assistant and tried to clarify some details about my contract, hoping they'd find a reason to drop me? Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. Even Chloe seemed momentarily speechless. My mom gasped. My dad just stared, his mouth slightly open. Yeah, I hadn't planned on dropping that one. I'd found out purely by accident when my editor, bless her slightly tipsy honesty at a conference party months ago, mentioned the weird call from my very concerned sister. At the time, I'd brushed it off, made excuses for Chloe, felt embarrassed. But now, seeing the flicker of guilt, quickly masked, in Chloe's eyes. It was real. She'd actually tried to derail my career before it even started. Chloe forced a laugh, high-pitched and brittle. That's insane. You're making that up. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Am I? I kept my gaze locked on hers. Why don't you tell everyone here it's not true? Swear on Mom's perfectly curated collection of porcelain dolls that you didn't make that call? She couldn't. She just glared, venom radiating off her. My mom burst into tears. Stop it. Both of you. This is supposed to be a happy occasion. It was a happy occasion, Mom, I said, feeling suddenly, overwhelmingly tired. Until the usual dynamics kicked in. But guess what? They're not kicking in anymore. Not for me. I turned away from them, facing the stunned crowd, my friends looking horrified and sympathetic, the strangers looking like they'd stumbled into a particularly awkward reality show. I'm really sorry, everyone, I said, my voice thick with emotion. This wasn't how I envisioned tonight, but thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting my book. I took a deep breath. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think my family needs to leave. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then, my dad, bless his conflict-avoidant heart, muttered something about maybe that's best and started gently steering my sobbing mother towards the door. Chloe shot me a look that could curdle milk, snatched her purse, and stalked out without a backward glance. And then they were gone. Just like that. Leaving me standing there, trembling, under the fairy lights, surrounded by copies of my book and a room full of shocked faces. My moment, utterly derailed, yet strangely liberated? It's weird how a lifetime of tension can build up like sediment, layer upon layer, until one tremor cracks the whole damn thing open. Looking back, the signs were always there. Chloe wasn't just a difficult sibling, she was the sun around which my parents' world revolved, and I was just a small, slightly inconvenient moon, expected to reflect her light and never, ever cause an eclipse. She's 2 years older than me. Growing up, she was always the bright, shiny one. Pretty, popular, effortlessly charming when she wanted to be. She got the lead roles in school plays, charmed teachers into giving her extensions, always had a posse of friends orbiting her. I was quieter. Bookish. Awkward. I lived mostly in my head, weaving stories, drawing, finding solace in things that didn't require navigating complex social minefields. Chloe learned early on that she could manipulate situations to her advantage. If she wanted my favorite toy, she'd engineer a scenario where I looked selfish for not sharing, and my parents would inevitably tell me to give it to her to keep the peace. If she got a bad grade, it was because the teacher was unfair or I distracted her while she was studying, even if I was in a different room. If I achieved something, won an art prize, got praised by a teacher, she'd either dismiss it, "Oh, that little thing?" or find a way to immediately one-up me, "Well, I just got asked to captain the debate team." My parents, bless their hearts, and I use that phrase with a hefty dose of weary irony now, were completely conflict-averse. My dad worked long hours, and when he was home, he just wanted quiet. He'd tune out any arguments, retreating into the newspaper or TV. My mom's strategy was appeasement, primarily appeasing Chloe. Chloe had epic tantrums, dramatic crying fits, could deploy guilt like a precision weapon. It was easier for Mom to smooth things over, to gently persuade me to apologize or concede, than to face Chloe's wrath. "Just let her have it, Liv," she'd whisper. "It's not worth the fight. Be the bigger person, honey. You know how sensitive your sister is." Sensitive? Chloe was about as sensitive as a bulldozer. But she weaponized the idea of sensitivity brilliantly. Any criticism, any boundary, any pushback was met with tears, accusations of being attacked, declarations that we didn't understand her or love her. And my parents always fell for it. They'd rush to comfort her, reassure her, and subtly, or not so subtly, imply that I was the one being difficult or unkind. So, I learned to swallow it. I learned to make myself smaller. I downplayed my accomplishments. I apologized for things that weren't my fault. I became the family peacemaker, the mediator, the one who absorbed the tension. It was exhausting. It felt like my role was to manage Chloe's emotions and my parents' anxiety, with no space left for my own needs or feelings. High school was rough. Chloe was in her popular upperclassman phase, and I was the awkward freshman little sister. She mostly ignored me unless she needed something, homework help, someone to cover for her when she broke curfew. But sometimes, for sport, she'd drop little bombs. Telling her friends embarrassing stories about me, usually exaggerated or completely fabricated. Pointing out my acne or my braces in front of cute boys. Once, she borrowed a story I'd written for English class, tweaked it slightly, and submitted it as her own. She got an A. When I confronted her, she laughed it off. "Oh, relax, Liv. It was basically just an idea you mentioned. Besides, you wouldn't have gotten an A anyway." My parents, when I tearfully told them, just sighed. "Are you sure, honey? Maybe you just had similar ideas. Don't make trouble with your sister." College was supposed to be my escape. I went to a university several states away. And for a while, it was. I thrived. I found my people who liked me for me, not for my role in a predetermined family drama. I excelled in my literature classes, started seriously writing fiction. I felt like I was finally breathing my own air. But the family dynamics had long tentacles. Chloe, predictably, stayed closer to home for college, ensuring she remained the center of my parents' universe. Phone calls home were always dominated by her latest drama, boyfriend troubles, roommate squabbles, perceived slights from professors. My achievements were met with a distracted "Oh, that's nice, dear," before the conversation inevitably shifted back to Chloe. The incident with the college fund deposit happened during my sophomore year. I'd saved up money from a summer job to contribute towards a specific study abroad program deposit. I made the mistake of telling my parents, excited. A week later, Chloe called me, sobbing. She'd overspent, maxed out her credit card, again, and needed money urgently to avoid some dire consequence she dramatically outlined. She swore she'd pay me back the next month when her student loan came through. My parents pressured me heavily. "Help your sister, Liv. Family helps family." Reluctantly, foolishly, I wired her the money. The full deposit amount. Of course, the next month came and went, and the one after that. When I pressed her, she got defensive. "God, you're so obsessed with money. I had unexpected expenses. It's not my fault." Eventually, she just stopped taking my calls about it. My parents told me to let it go. "She's trying her best, honey. Don't put pressure on her." I missed the study abroad program. Chloe never paid me back. Not a cent. Then there was my engagement to Mark. He was a good guy, kind, stable, genuinely loved me. Chloe seemed to despise him on sight. She was coldly polite to his face, but behind his back, she dripped poison. She'd tell my parents Mark wasn't ambitious enough for me, pot, meat kettle. She'd tell me little concerns she had, that he seemed bored when I talked about writing, that he looked at other women, he didn't. Her masterpiece was cornering Mark at our engagement party. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but Mark was visibly shaken afterwards. He later told me Chloe had said, with faux sympathetic concern, things like, Liv's always been a bit insecure, you know. She rushes into things because she's scared of being alone. I just hope she's not settling. For her sake, of course. It planted a seed of doubt. Not necessarily in Mark's feelings for me, but in my own judgment. Was I settling? Was I just scared? Chloe knew exactly where my insecurities lay and poked them with surgical precision. Combined with other pressures and my own anxieties, likely exacerbated by years of being undermined, the relationship eventually crumbled. Chloe, naturally, was right there to say, I told you so, cloaked in sisterly sympathy. I just knew he wasn't right for you, sweetie. I could see it. My parents echoed her sentiments. Maybe Chloe saw something you didn't, Liv. No one acknowledged her role in poisoning the well. The grad school recommendation letter incident was more subtle but just as damaging. I needed a letter from a specific professor, one Chloe had also had a few years prior. She'd charmed him, naturally. I asked him, and he agreed enthusiastically. He said he'd mail it directly. Weeks went by, and the deadline loomed. I contacted the university, they hadn't received it. I called the professor, flustered. He was confused. He said he'd given it to Chloe to mail weeks ago, because she'd stopped by his office and offered to save him a trip to the post office, saying she was sending a package anyway. Convenient. When I confronted Chloe, she feigned innocence. Oh my God, Liv, did it not get there? That's terrible. Maybe it got lost in the mail? I definitely sent it. Her eyes, however, held that familiar flicker of malicious satisfaction. I missed the deadline. I couldn't prove anything, and my parents just sighed about the unreliable postal service. It wasn't always huge things. It was the constant stream of smaller cuts. The backhanded compliments. The way she'd interrupt me constantly. The way she'd borrow clothes and return them stained or not at all. The way she'd share personal things I'd told her in confidence with the whole family, often twisted for dramatic effect. And always, my parents enabling it, smoothing it over, telling me I was too sensitive, telling me to be the bigger person. My stepdad, Kevin, entered the picture about 10 years ago after my parents divorced, a relatively amicable split, considering. Kevin is fine. Mostly harmless. He's a financial guy, obsessed with work, and largely detached from the family drama. He seemed to see Chloe for what she was, occasionally rolling his eyes at her antics, but he never intervened. He wasn't invested enough to rock the boat Mom was desperately trying to keep steady. His presence didn't really change the core dynamic, just added another person tiptoeing around Chloe. Writing became my true sanctuary. It was the one place where I could control the narrative, where my voice mattered. Pouring my frustrations, my observations, my secret hurts and hopes into fiction felt like reclaiming myself. Getting the book deal felt like validation on a scale I'd never experienced. It was proof that my little stories weren't just sweet or niche. They had value. I'd known, deep down, that the launch party would be a minefield. Part of me hadn't even wanted to invite them. But another part, the part conditioned by years of seeking their approval, felt obligated. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe seeing the physical book, the culmination of so much work, would make them finally see me. See my achievement as separate from Chloe, as something to be genuinely celebrated. How naive I was. Chloe's behavior, her words by the book table, weren't just an isolated incident. They were the culmination of a lifetime pattern, the inevitable expression of her need to always be the center, to always diminish me to make herself feel bigger. And my parents' reaction, Mom's panic don't make a scene, Dad's hesitant calm down, was just as predictable. Protect Chloe, maintain the peace, keep the ugly truth hidden beneath the veneer of family harmony. When I finally unloaded, spilling years of suppressed anger and hurt under those fairy lights, it wasn't just about Chloe's comment. It was about the college fund, the engagement sabotage, the lost recommendation letter, the thousands of tiny cuts, the constant gaslighting, the profound loneliness of being the designated scapegoat and peacemaker in my own family. It was about finally refusing to be the bigger person, because being the bigger person always meant letting myself be trampled. It was about claiming my own damn story, literally and figuratively. The sabotage attempt with the editor was just the horrifying, undeniable proof that her actions weren't just petty jealousy, they were actively malicious, aimed at destroying something truly important to me. And that, I realized with sickening clarity, was unforgivable. The immediate aftermath of my family's dramatic exit from the launch party was weird. A stunned silence hung in the air for a few moments, thick with second-hand embarrassment and shock. Then, my friends rallied. Sarah, my oldest friend who'd witnessed years of Chloe's bullshit, enveloped me in a fierce hug. "Oh my God, Liv," she whispered. "You finally did it. I'm so proud of you." Mark, a different, much kinder Mark, my current boyfriend, who is thankfully immune to Chloe's charms, gently steered me towards a chair, pressing a glass of water into my hand. Others came up, offering quiet words of support, congratulating me on the book, pointedly ignoring the implosion they'd just witnessed. The bookstore owner, looking flustered but sympathetic, apologetically said they probably needed to close up soon. I nodded, numbly signed a few more books for people who lingered, trying to paste a smile on my face that felt brittle and fake. Part of me wanted to crawl into a hole. Another part felt strangely exhilarated, like I'd just shed a heavy, suffocating skin. The cleanup felt surreal. My friends helped pack the leftover books, clear away the wine glasses and cheese debris. The conversation was muted. Everyone seemed unsure what to say. Was I okay? Hell no. Was I maybe, possibly, going to be okay eventually? Maybe. Mark drove me home. He didn't push me to talk, just held my hand, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm swirling inside me. When we got back to my apartment, the dam broke. I sobbed. Not the quiet, dignified tears my mother shed, but ugly, racking sobs that tore through me. Sobbing for the ruined night, sobbing for the years of hurt, sobbing for the family I wished I had versus the one I was stuck with, sobbing for the sheer relief of finally letting it all out, and sobbing with terror at what I'd just done. I blew it all up, I choked out between gasps. My own book launch. I just detonated everything. Mark pulled me close. "You didn't blow it up, Liv," he said firmly. "They did. Chloe tried to sabotage you, again. Your parents tried to silence you, again. You just refused to let them get away with it this time. You stood up for yourself. That's not blowing things up, that's drawing a boundary." His words helped, but the guilt and fear were still potent. Years of conditioning don't evaporate overnight. The expected communication barrage started the next morning. My phone buzzed relentlessly. First, a barrage of texts from my mother. "Olivia, I am deeply disappointed in your behavior. You embarrassed the entire family. Chloe is devastated. You were cruel. We need to talk. This needs to be fixed. Answer your phone. Your father and I raised you better than this. Think about what you've done to your sister." Then came the voicemails. Mom, tearful, pleading with me to apologize to Chloe, to smooth things over, to think about family. Dad, gruff and awkward, telling me I'd gone too far and needed to make amends. Chloe, surprisingly, was silent. No texts, no calls. That was almost worse. It felt like the calm before a storm, her calculating how best to retaliate or spin the narrative. I didn't answer any of them. I couldn't. What was there to say? An apology felt like a betrayal of myself, a return to the old pattern. But the silence felt like stretching a rubber band tighter and tighter. A few days later, the flying monkeys were deployed. My Aunt Carol, Mom's sister, called. She started sweet, congratulating me on the book. Had Mom put her up to actually reading the title? Then gently pivoted. "Your mother is so upset, Olivia. And poor Chloe. She's beside herself. Maybe you misunderstood? You know how Chloe can be, sometimes she says things the wrong way." "No, Aunt Carol," I interrupted, my voice weary. "I didn't misunderstand. And I'm done making excuses for how Chloe can be." I summarized the editor incident briefly. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Look," I continued, "I appreciate you calling, but I'm not discussing this further. I need space." I hung up before she could argue. It felt empowering and terrifying in equal measure. Each refusal to engage, each boundary held, felt like flexing a muscle I barely knew I had. But it also widened the chasm between me and them. The hardest part was the guilt. Mom's texts evolved into longer, more manipulative messages. How could I do this to her? Didn't I care about family? Was this book more important than her happiness? She painted Chloe as the victim, fragile and wounded by my attack. She completely ignored, or refused to acknowledge, the context, the years of bullying, the sabotage attempts. It was classic gaslighting, and seeing it so clearly now was both infuriating and heartbreaking. This was my mother, the person who was supposed to protect me, actively trying to manipulate me into apologizing for being abused. My dad's attempts were less frequent but carried their own weight. Phone calls where he'd sigh heavily and talk about keeping the peace and family sticking together, no matter what. When I tried to explain my side, he'd just say, "That's history, Livy. We need to look forward. Your sister. Well, she needs us." The implication was clear, her needs trumped mine, always. Weeks turned into a month. I maintained minimal contact. Short, polite responses to direct questions, refusing to engage on the topic of the launch party or Chloe. I focused on work, on promoting the book, which, ironically, started getting a little buzz, maybe partly fueled by the launch party drama whispered through local literary circles. On my relationship with Mark, on my friendships. My friends were amazing. Sarah checked in regularly, other friends sent supportive messages. Mark was my rock, listening without judgment, validating my feelings, celebrating my small victories with the book. He never once pressured me to reconcile, just affirmed my right to protect myself. Then Chloe finally made her move. Not directly to me, of course. She posted a long, vague status on social media. Something about the pain of being misunderstood by those closest to you, about how success can change people, clearly implying me, about the importance of forgiveness even when you've been deeply hurt, painting herself as the magnanimous victim. It was masterfully crafted passive aggression. Several distant relatives and family friends commented with sympathetic messages. "Thinking of you, Chloe. Stay strong. Some people just don't appreciate family." It made my blood boil. She was controlling the narrative, painting me as the villain, the ungrateful daughter and sister who lashed out because of newfound success. Part of me wanted to fire back, to expose everything publicly. But Mark gently dissuaded me. "Don't stoop to her level, Liv. People who know you, know the truth. Let her broadcast her own toxicity." He was right. Engaging would just give her the drama she craved. So, I unfollowed her. Blocked her number. It felt like another small amputation, necessary but painful. I also muted my mom and dad on social media to avoid seeing the inevitable supportive comments they'd leave on Chloe's post. Life settled into a new, strange normal. A normal without constant low-level anxiety about the next family gathering, without carefully monitoring my words, without bracing for Chloe's next dig. It was quieter, emptier in some ways, but also more peaceful. The silence from them was heavy, laden with unspoken recrimination, but it was also a relief. I realized how much energy I'd been expending managing them, trying to anticipate and deflect Chloe's attacks, trying to win my parents' approval. Without that constant drain, I had more energy for myself, for my writing, for the people who actually supported me. My writing improved. I felt more creative, less inhibited. My relationship with Mark deepened. We were building a life based on mutual respect and support, worlds away from the dysfunctional dynamics I grew up with. There were pangs of sadness, of course. Seeing photos of family events I wasn't invited to, a cousin's baby shower, my dad's birthday dinner, communicated subtly through other relatives or social media. Missing the idea of family, the Norman Rockwell version that never really existed for me anyway. Wondering if I'd made a mistake, if I should have just kept swallowing it for the sake of keeping the peace. My mother tried one last big push a couple of months later. She called, sounding unusually calm. She didn't mention Chloe initially. She talked about mundane things, asked about the book. Then, the pivot. "Olivia, darling, life is too short for these silences. Whatever happened, can't we put it behind us? For me? I miss my daughter. I miss my family being whole." My heart ached. I missed her too, or the idea of her I wished she was. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I miss you too. But putting it behind us means pretending none of it happened. It means going back to the way things were. And I can't do that. The way things were was hurting me. Deeply." "But Chloe is willing to forgive you," she exclaimed, betraying her true agenda. "Forgive me?" I almost laughed. "Mom, what exactly am I supposed to be forgiven for? For finally telling the truth? For refusing to let her sabotage my career?" "She didn't mean it like that, Olivia. You twisted her words. And that editor thing," she explained that, "it was a misunderstanding." "No, Mom," I said firmly. "It wasn't a misunderstanding. And I'm not twisting anything. This isn't up for debate. If Chloe wants to apologize for years of manipulation and specifically for trying to sabotage my book contract, I might be willing to listen. If you and Dad are willing to acknowledge the pattern and stop enabling her, maybe we can find a way forward. But I will not apologize. I will not pretend. And I will not go back to being the family scapegoat." There was a long pause. Then, my mother's voice turned cold. "I see. Your pride is more important than your family. No, Mom, I replied, the finality settling in my chest, heavy but solid. My well-being is more important than pretending this family is healthy when it's not. She hung up. That was months ago. There's been mostly silence since then, broken only by occasional, stilted birthday texts or obligatory holiday cards signed only by my parents. Chloe remains blocked and out of sight. Kevin sends the occasional awkward email about finances or asking for my address for a Christmas card, carefully neutral. Life is different. Better, mostly. Peaceful. I finished the draft of my second novel in record time. My relationship with Mark is thriving. My friendships are stronger. I sleep better. The constant knot of anxiety in my stomach has loosened significantly. But there's a lingering sadness. A grief for the family I lost, or maybe never really had. There are moments when I crave that connection, that sense of belonging, however flawed it was. I see happy families on TV or friends interacting easily with their siblings, and there's a pang of envy, of loss. I regret the ugliness of the confrontation at the launch party, the public stage, the raw emotion. I wish it could have happened differently, more privately perhaps, though I suspect any confrontation would have been met with the same denial and deflection. I don't regret standing up for myself, not anymore. I don't regret drawing the line. But I do regret that it had to come to that. I'm still figuring out who I am without the label of Chloe's little sister or the family peacemaker. It's like navigating without a map I didn't even realize I was using. It's freeing, but also disorienting. I'm learning to trust my own judgment, to value my own voice, to build a life where I'm the main character, not just a supporting player in someone else's drama. It's a process, I guess. Healing isn't linear. Some days I feel strong and resolute, other days, the guilt and sadness creep back in. But I know, deep down, that I can't go back. The price of peace in my family was my own self-worth, and I'm not willing to pay it anymore. So, Reddit, after pouring all this out, was I wrong to finally prioritize myself, even if it meant shattering the family illusion and potentially losing them for good? What would you have done in my shoes?